It's live on KEXP. Seattle at 90.3 FM live and on demand at kexp.org and the free mobile apps. These live sessions are made possible from donations, so thank you so much for your support. My name is Chili. I am so happy to be in our live space with an amazing band making movies live on KEXP.
song's called Sala De Los Pecadores. It's a little cumbia for all the sinners listening in the audience.
Hasta David el digno rey en su desliz se comió el mamey. Dame un trago, un cigarro, una pastilla. Tengo un dolor intenso, doctor, no se me quita. Ya no duermo, nunca llego a la orilla. Noche tras noche se repite esta pesadilla. Dame una jeva que sea bien buena y poner en mi cama. Sabe la hembra que mueve la cadera de la tatuada. Vamos a ver si me cura el placer o me lleva a enloquecer. Perdí la fe, como te lloré, desolado entré a la sala de los pecadores y te busqué, abrumado lloré, al cielo grité y a basta de los malos amores. El día que naciste nadie te dice entraste al eterno sufrir. El día que naciste nadie te dice entraste al eterno sufrir. Se repite, se repite, se repite, se repite, me marea. Perdí la fe, como te lloré, desolado entré a la sala de los pecadores y te busqué, abrumado lloré, al cielo grité y a basta de los malos amores. Y a basta de los malos amores. El día que naciste nadie te dice entraste al eterno sufrir. El día que naciste nadie te dice entraste al eterno sufrir. Y se repite, se repite, se repite, se repite.
Live on KEXP. Making movies. Sounded outstanding today.
Ella camina al revés, Porcelina, y me jura que ha visto esa torre de Babel. Ella sabe que la vida es mucho más Caín que Abel, y me escribió este poema ahí en el pedacito de papel que dice: no quiero verte andar perdido en la vía del tren. No quiero verte tan aburrido, bebé. Ella agarra tu mano, adivina. Esos temores que llevas ocultado en el fondo de tu ser. Ella sabe que la muerte es más rosa que clavel, y me escribió este poema ahí en el pedacito de papel que dice: no quiero verte andar perdido en la vía del tren. No quiero verte tan aburrido, bebé. No quiero verte lástima verte vagando sin rumbo en la vía del tren. Sé que crees que nadie ve tus temores, que nadie te entiende. Bueno, ya cambia esa cara, no ves, todo saldrá bien. No quiero verte andar perdido en la vía del tren. No quiero verte tan aburrido, bebé. Sé que crees que ocultas bien tus angustias. Eso es mentira, se ve. Eso es mentira, se ve. Eso es mentira, se ve. en mi magia. Como ave de mal agüero, viajeros en ruta a puerto. Y soy el que soy y canto el lenguaje en traje maquillaje, el que roja y negra. Espejo, dime por qué me desespero. Dime lo que pasó. Como ave de mal agüero, viajeros en ruta a puerto. Desde antes del dinero, fui testigo de la verdad. ¿Qué pasó, amigo? Dime lo que pasó. Oye, dime, cuéntame. Dime lo que pasó. Oye, cuéntame. Dime lo que pasó. Me da risa porque nadie sabe los secretos de nuestro pasado. Somos luceros en la noche, somos guardianes del legado. Como ave de mal agüero, viajeros en ruta a puerto. Desde antes del dinero, fui testigo de la verdad. Sopa. Ataca a Juan-Carlos. Nunca moriré.
Whew, yeah. Live on KEXP, it's making movies. Sounded awesome today.
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome, chicos. How you doing?
Doing great, man. We've been looking forward to this for a long time.
I've been looking forward to this for a long, long time too. So, making movies. You started around 2009, and that kind of coincides with the show that I co-host. El Sonido started back in 2011, and so your songs were some of the first songs that were played on the show, and really the start of really representing Latin music on KEXP, music en español. So you've been a history of KEXP and the show, so it's so great to have you in studio.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the work you're doing to create space for this music. That's a big part of our story too.
It's really our pleasure. Tell me a little bit about the start of the band. How did you come together?
Well, Diego and I are brothers, and we were born in Santiago, Panama, but our families moved to Kansas City, Missouri, like right in the smack middle of America. We're supposed to only be there for 4 years, but we ended up growing up there. And we started playing music, and we knew we wanted to make music that represented this identity that wasn't one thing, you know. I remember the feeling of like definitely being in a suburb in middle America from Panama. Nobody knew what that was. But when we went back to Panama, our cousins are like, "Oh, you're our gringo cousins." And we're like, "Uh-oh." That means we're like outsiders in Panama and outsiders in America. So we wanted to kind of make music that represented that. And when we met Juan-Carlos, he had grown up not only dancing ballet folklorico from his Mexican-American heritage, but he'd also been playing in like salsa bands since he was a teenager. And we were able to infuse the rhythms that we heard in our heads and the sound and start on this journey that is really creating a Frankenstein. And 3 years ago, we went through 2 drummers, an initial drummer, then Juan-Carlos' brother took over the seat. But having met Duncan Burnett, who grew up right outside of Kansas City, grew up playing gospel music at church, and bringing the Black American experience into this mix is actually the missing piece that we've been looking for. It's like we had a Frankenstein that needed that extra leg so it could fully walk. We were wanting to make something that felt American in the broad sense of that word, thinking of the continent.
And I think you do that perfectly. The mix of rock and roots music and Latin flavors, it just comes together perfectly.
Well, thank you.
And I think you get better and better.
That's the hope, right?
Yeah, it feels like that with this album, with that song that we just played, XOPA. That tune is, in a way, like represents us the best because it's all happening at the exact same time. The mambo bell and the heavy conga rhythm and this angular kind of alternative rock and roll with psychedelic elements. Like it doesn't leave any part aside. It's not like we're going through sections. It's just kind of all happening at once, and it works, which I think is the message of this band. That stuff can live in harmony together.
And how did it work initially in Kansas City? It's a music city.
It is a music city. It is a music city that is trying to reclaim its jazz history. It's had fits and starts of fully like embracing that, and a lot of that comes from systemic stuff. Like that's Black American history, and sometimes the powers that be don't want to celebrate Black American history the way they should. So, I mean, there's a saying, like there's a statue of Winston Churchill in Kansas City, but there's not a statue of Charlie Parker, right? So it has this music city history, but it's trying to learn how to be a bigger city because it's now attracting people, it's growing. And at first, we didn't have a lot of opportunities to play outside of like Juan-Carlos' family restaurant, and a few of the rock and roll promoters started taking a liking to us, and they would let us open up shows. But that gave us a spirit of always making our own stuff. So we started curating a festival where we brought Las Cafeteras and Hooray for the Riff Raff, and we would use that as a way to fund like a music program that we started too, because the immigrant neighborhoods and the inner city neighborhoods didn't have music programs, at least not that we were seeing. And so we started a music camp, and we would build our own thing. So it was a blessing and a curse to not have like built out infrastructure to tap into, but it made us have this like energy of like, well, we'll just make it. We'll just make our own little world.
And you've been doing some cool collaborations through the years too, like Hooray for the Riff Raff, Flor de Toloache, which are, I would say, other bands that are fusing different sounds together for a new thing. And for the first full-length record, you hooked up with Steve Berlin from Los Lobos, which I think is a perfect fit. How did that come to be?
Well, that was this gentleman, Frank, runs this really vibey venue in Kansas City, and it's like he built it from scratch. Like the bleachers he bought from a high school, like that was demolishing it, and he put the train caboose as part of like the VIP lounge, and he had this like blues honky tonk, and he booked Los Lobos. And it was like the biggest show he had done at his venue, and he let us open. And Steve heard us there and said, call me first if you're going to make a record. He didn't know that we didn't have anybody else in the Rolodex, so it was really easy to call Steve first. We were just so grateful to learn from him. And he remains a mentor and a friend. He helped co-write a song on the new album called La Sombra. And we were just with him. Juan-Carlos sometimes sits in with Los Lobos.
Yeah, I get a chance to play percussion with them, so it's always a pleasure to be around them. And just you get to just being around them, being on stage with them, you learn a lot. And so that's definitely been a pleasure in being able to get to know them. So especially Steve, who's been able to, produce us and work with us and help us create the sound that we're growing into now.
I think it's a great fit. You mentioned coming from Panama. I wanted to mention another collaborator, Ruben Blades. That is pretty amazing. How did you connect to make music together?
On Tinder. So
really?
We were swiping around, and he saw, almost that crazy. He saw an article on the internet about us, and he clicked and listened to the music, and and said, whoa, I like this. And we were kind of like, we had our heads hung low because we've been so DIY. We put out our second album ourselves, and we were about to be in Los Angeles. We're like loading into a weird bar in San Diego, and we're like, damn, man, we messed up. Right? In the music business, you try to invite influential people to your show. And we're doing that for Los Angeles, and everybody's like, yeah, we'd love to come, but we're going to be in Las Vegas for the Latin Grammys. We're like, damn, lesson learned. You don't put your LA show the night of the Latin Grammys because nobody's around to come see it, you know? And so we're like, kind of like, kind of holding our heads low. And Ruben was being interviewed on the red carpet, and they asked him, what have you been listening to? And he said, I've been listening to this band making movies. 2 Panamanians, a Mexican guy. I guess there's a Cuban guy. There's Cuban rhythms, but there's no Cuban guy in the band. But we couldn't believe it. We were just like floored. And then he took on to Twitter, and he's like, I'd love to collaborate. And that's when we started creating a song together called No Te Calles, which has become a bit of like a mantra for the group. It represents our message of really elevating voices who maybe don't get heard, and not only for ourselves, this band of immigrant and black and brown folk, but also the kids in the music programs that we run, and it just kind of like centered us. And then we started working on a record, and we played a tune today that he sent us via email. He's like, hey, I know you're working on a record. I know No Te Calles is going in there, and maybe this song you might find a home for it. I wrote it with Lou Reed 30 years ago, and we haven't done anything with it. So maybe you all could. And it was the song Delilah. And we continue to have a friendship, and he also has sat down with us. Like, we were in New York City in the beginning of 2020, right before everything kind of shut down for traveling. And he just took time to have lunch with us and give us his insight from these, years and years of music making and trying to move like consciousness forward through music making. He just sat down and like poured out all this wisdom to the point that I literally took out a notebook to take notes, and it seemed like that was intentional. So those kind of moments are like, I don't even know what to say about it. It's so grateful to get wisdom like that. Like, I feel emotional talking about it. Like, holy smokes! Like having people that have been through such a long journey just slow down and mentor you is a gift. It's an amazing gift.
It says something about the band. If you got legends seeking you out and teaming up together, it's really amazing.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
And not only the sound of the band is great, but lyrically, you also have a lot of themes in the songs, but also through albums, be it immigrants in the United States or personal struggle being universal struggle. In the 2022 record, XOPA, what are some of the themes or theme of the record that are happening here?
So this album, we started cooking it up right before things shut down, and we were in the studio when we found out South by Southwest was canceled. We had a bunch of exciting stuff, and what that gave it gave us space to really think about what we wanted to say. And when we were together in the studio, it was actually risky. The way it feels today, where it's like you should take a COVID test and a mask and all that, except that we didn't have all that information on all the best practices. So we knew we were taking some risks, and our band members have families, and we all have partners, we all have responsibilities, and we're taking a risk to make music. This thing has to mean something. And not that it never didn't before, but it had an elevated sense of that. And we made an album. I write the lyrics, but we always discuss it. We want to make sure the band is aligned. And it's an album about self-acceptance. I think that time to reflect and that time in the pandemic, you go through things that maybe you're not so proud of your own history, your own families, things that maybe make you angry. I think there was an anger in the band before about feeling like the system is against us, that it's stacked against us. And now that anger has transitioned into a sense of like peace about knowing, well, this is our place. This is all I can be is this. And I have to forgive myself and forgive the human beings that maybe don't know they're participating in a system that is flawed and is hurting people, and coming to a sense of forgiveness, because I think our relationships also matured. We're not kids anymore. And so all of our relationships have had to mature, and the only way to have true love in your life, romantic or otherwise, is forgiveness. You have to really be vulnerable and dive into that. And that's what the record ultimately is about.
Well, I want to thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to have you in here. We've been waiting for like 11 years to get you in the Seattle studios. Thank you so much making movies. It's been a pleasure having you live on KEXP.
Oh, man, it's been a real treat to share this music here.
Woo!
For sure. Thank you, Chili.
Yeah.
And thank you for listening and watching. Please subscribe to KEXP's YouTube channel. These live on KEXP sessions are made possible through donor support. So thanks to everyone who donates. You can learn more and make a donation if you go to KEXP.org. Thank you so much. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Making movies live on KEXP.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.